Knife in Close Combat. Chapter 1. General Rules of Knife Self-Defense. Self-defense against a knife uses the skills of transferring your center of gravity and gives experience controlling movement at various speeds necessary for defense from knife attacks. It also helps to learn footwork and how to optimally use your energy in combat. It is important for students not to be afraid and to feel the weapon, know its characteristics, and skillfully use them while withdrawing from the line of attack. When using a cold weapon in hand-to-hand combat, the same laws of the mechanics of the human body apply as in hand-to-hand combat without a weapon. It is necessary to be able to control your body as well as to know how to use objects nearby, how to use your own energy and physical strength that you apply into strikes. During exercises, students must constantly evaluate distance and consider the following particular properties. While approaching from a long-distance, knife throws can be used. Strikes with a knife or objects nearby will mainly be delivered from a middle or close distance. Combat with a knife is generally shorter. Exercises usually begin with disarming. Following the rule, a weapon that still is in the attacker's hand must be taken. Executing that rule requires use of combat tactics. Knife disarming techniques are used with a goal of knocking the knife out of your opponent's hand or pushing it to the side to deliver a strike, stab, or disarm him. The opponent's knife can be knocked out with your arm or objects nearby, and possibly with your legs. Strikes are delivered to primary striking zones and pressure points, or the closest joints. At the same time, it is necessary to withdraw from the line of a possible attack. In case of an insufficiently strong strike, when the weapon was not knocked out, you need to continue to decrease distance and quickly deliver repeated strikes to an unprotected body parts. Use the technique of levers and attacks to primary striking zones and pressure points. In military or police technique, it is necessary to take the knife from the attacker. Use technique of unbalancing the opponent and escorting him, or technique of shocking strikes with a goal of capturing or delivering him to a police station. After sufficient practice disarming with and without the use of objects nearby, proceed to tactics of working with a knife in combat in general. Using methods of disarmament, it is necessary to allow the student to use reasonable creativity, initiative, and use non-standard approaches. In every training session, it is necessary to devote attention to practice techniques while blindfolded. Defense from knife attacks is used simultaneously with reduction of distance from the opponent and withdrawal from the line of attack. Move using the principle step, slide, step. Meet the knife with your left wrist from the outer side of your opponent's palm and simultaneously rotate your hand 90 degrees towards the place of strike. Move in a squat and turn your body from left to right. Simultaneously knock the knife out with an upward motion of your hand or rotation toward your opponent's thumb. Then quickly counterattack. Chapter 2. Knife Disarming Techniques Using a Lever and the Three-Plane Concept. Let's start with the situation when the opponent is just holding a knife, but he is not attacking. This could be the threat of a knife. We'll look at the principle of using a lever. First, create a pivot point. That is the point below the wrist and handle of the knife. The first vector or direction will be towards me. I begin to pull the knife not just with my hand, but together with my body weight. Then, I add a horizontal motion to the side. This is the second plane. The third plane will be perpendicular motion upwards. 1, 2, 3. Pay attention. The opponent is far away from me. Before I reach him, he will be able to react. Therefore, I use the same principle of three planes, but on his wrist. I do this simultaneously with a squat, rotation, and reducing distance from my next technique. One more time. I am working in the same manner, moving in three planes. I lock the knife in the direction of the central axis of my body and, using my body weight while straightening it, move upwards. First, determine the type of blade the knife has. This could be a strong army knife or flexible. The knife could have a single or double-sided blade. Place your hand from above and grab the knife. If it has a double-sided blade, do not grab the knife. Just place your hand flat from above. Create the first plane. Create a pivot point and pull the knife in the first plane using your pelvis. This direction is toward yourself, along the plane of your opponent's arm. Then rotate in the horizontal plane, and then upwards in the third plane. Next, you can use the same principle on a wrist. Rotate with your pelvis. will look at the principle of using a lever. We have created a pivot point. Rotate the wrist toward yourself and rotate the knife in the opposite direction. Immobilize your opponent's shoulder and take the knife. This can be used for the threat of a knife in a static situation. In dynamic situations, it will differ. I rotate in 3 planes. Let's look at the principle of working with a lever. It could be applied to any hard object in your opponent's hand. If the knife has a double-sided blade, I just place my hand on top. By doing this, I define the first plane. Create a pivot point for your lever. Slightly squat, rotate the knife, and take it. I can also use a lever and rotation with 2 points. The first point is the opponent's wrist. The second is the tip of the knife's blade. The most important part is creating the pivot points, which will be your locking point and point of rotation. Watch one more time. The principle of lever and rotation is the most basic principle of mechanics. Let's look at fingers locks. An opponent holds a knife with his fingers, mainly the thumb and pinky. Those are the 2 outermost points. That's why, when I move, I immediately grab the opponent's thumb. In this case, the knife's handle is already pointed at the opponent, so I can deliver a strike with the handle to his temple. A knife is a firm object. Create a pivot point through which you will rotate. Following the natural movement of your body, extend your strength to the end of the knife. Move toward yourself. The grab will begin to loosen. Here, it is important to turn the knife towards the opponent's thumb at the same time as you slightly squat. The movement of the thighs and transfer of body weight are important. Freely lay your hands and rotate. Move your pelvis in one direction. The hold on the knife loosens. Move it in the other direction. Take the knife. You can move in the other direction, but keep using the principle of transfer of body weight and rotation. You can loosen the hold by creating discomfort in the wrist. If the opponent is tightly holding something, bend his wrist in this direction. It is the same when you bend the wrist in the other direction, and it becomes uncomfortable to hold. It weakens the hold. So, we create conditions of discomfort. Hold the knife and deliver a strike to the pivot point. Engage not with the blade, but with the wrist. It is important to do this not with your hands, but by transferring your body weight. If the blade is horizontal, you can turn it upward. In this case, rotate upwards and then towards the opponent. It is not important how the knife is oriented. The most important part is the lever principle with rotation through the pivot point by transferring your body weight. Create a pivot point and lock it. Rotate and transfer your body weight. Take the knife while reducing distance. Watch another version. Watch another version. Rotate the knife in a figure 8. This is the same, in shortened form, pivot point and rotate. One more time. Pay attention to the type of blade. Find the pivot point. Beginning from your pelvis, pull the knife towards yourself. Then, rotate to the sides and upwards. You can hold the tip of the blade with your fingertips. It is important to keep the pivot point still. Rotate and transfer your body weight. If the knife is pointed from above, use the same principle. Find the pivot point, rotate through it, and create a state of discomfort in the opponent's wrist, so that the opponent lets go of the knife. To knock a knife out of someone's hand, use the principle of rotation together with striking technique using the arms or legs. Place your left hand on your opponent's hand from above, like a fork, and begin to rotate the wrist. Your right hand comes from below. First, rotate in one direction, then immediately in the other. Depending on your goal, if you need to deliver the opponent to the station, use the corresponding escorting technique. You can deliver a strike to the wrist or shoulder and forearm area. Chapter 3. Turning a knife against an opponent. There is a concept of turning weapons against an opponent. Watch the motion itself. Now, do the same when someone is holding a knife. Use this motion simultaneously with defense and counterattack.
Вот здесь только чуть-чуть приоткрыл, чтобы туда дальше пустить. Точку опоры, то есть вот она здесь.
This method is similar to escaping grabs.
Каким образом? Смотрите. Работа. Вот оно, освобождение от захвата. Вот оно, идет работа.
Begin training with a simple rotation of the wrist at a slow pace. Then, try to shorten the rotating motion. In practice, this is used. For example, when a person pulls out a knife from behind the back. It is important to catch the moment when the knife isn't moving towards you yet, but is just pointed towards you, during the pre-attack motions, and not during the attack itself. There will be a motion towards you, and you will have to immediately redirect it. Lock the wrist to create a pivot point. Then rotate and redirect it towards your partner. When the knife moves upward from below, it is a cutting motion. Moving downwards from above is a stabbing motion. The key to this is keeping the pivot point still, rotating and simultaneously withdrawing from the line of attack and taking the weapon. The knife is pointed from above. The end of the handle is one point. The tip of the knife is the second. Use the same principle. Use this method on the wrist, not on the knife. You need to rotate. Regardless of where the knife is pointed, it is important to practice the principle of rotation and keeping the pivot point still in various orientations. Try to redirect the knife back toward your opponent. Chapter 4. Body integration into the knife's plane. Please point the knife at me and push a little. The most important part is to move your legs and integrate or place your body in a plane parallel to the knife's blade. Watch. Without using my hands, I integrate my body into the knife's plane. Rotate in one direction and then in the other. I only use my hands to help redirect the opponent. I am showing this on purpose so that you see how important body motion is. I need to rotate my body in order to lock the pivot point and point the knife at the opponent. Also use rotation on the wrist. Watch. The opponent threatens me with the knife. I integrate my body, moving it out from the line of attack, and rotate the opponent's wrist. When the opponent is on the floor, you cannot just leave him. As soon as you turn around, he will stand up and immediately attack you again. Therefore, it is important to use the following technique. For police, this will be joint locks and escorting the attacker to the station. You should be relaxed while training and must pay attention to your breathing.
Мне надоело сопровождать, или он что-то это. Принцип
As soon as you have integrated yourself in the knife's plane, begin moving your legs to get closer to the opponent.
здесь пошел.
Watch one more time. Integrate yourself in the knife's plane. Begin to redirect the knife towards the opponent.
Теперь потихоньку
Once you practice this and can sense the knife with your body, you can begin using your hands.
вначале на отшаге. Здесь, здесь.
In this situation, once you have redirected the knife, you can deliver a strike to the elbow and take the knife.
Следующий момент.
If the blade is horizontal, again, create a pivot point with your left hand. Immobilize the blade with your right hand and pull towards yourself and slightly downwards. Then, rotate to the side and upwards.
То есть здесь я его забираю.
I can press the knife parallel to my body, squat, and keep the knife still, while stepping backwards, move upwards, and take the knife out of the hand. Right now, I am deliberately not using my hands to show the main idea.
Теперь смотрите, начинаем. То есть смотрите, первый момент какой.
The knife is pointed at my chest. First, I integrate myself in the knife's plane. I make a motion to shift his body weight.
Чувствую его как бы конструкцию.
The knife is pointed at my chest. First, I integrate myself in the knife's plane. Then, begin to move backwards. It is important to begin slowly. Feel the structure of the knife. I make a motion to shift his body weight.
Здесь.
I also need to determine where most of the opponent's weight is, what his support is built on. I make a motion to shift his body weight. It is important to develop sensitivity in yourself. Feel the direction of the knife's pressure and integrate yourself in the knife's plane based on this pressure. Right now, I am deliberately not using my hands to show the main idea. In a real situation, you should use your hands to help. When working with an opponent, work slowly and keep track of how the opponent's body reacts to your rotation, where his weight is redirected. The spine goes through the center of the body. This is the central axis. If the knife is pointed more to the left, rotate to the left. Rotate to the left. Lock the wrist and begin to control the opponent and a knife.
Смысл какой? Наставили нож. Если он на
Once
ноге,
more, This is the central axis. If the knife is pointed more to the left, rotate to the left. The techniques that you use immediately after taking the knife depend upon the specific situation. It is important not to stop, because the opponent will not wait and will continue the attack. It is important to sense the blade and place your body parallel to it, like a wall, and then move towards the opponent. Once more, everything begins with plane integration. Lock the wrist and rotate. You can also deliver a kick. Feel the direction of the knife's pressure. Integrate your body into the same plane. Once more, feel the direction of the knife's pressure. Integrate your body into the same plane. The knife could be pointed at various angles, upwards, downwards, or straight to your body. Let's look at the case when the knife is pointed slightly downward. I will move downwards as well, move backwards, and integrate my body. If the knife is angled upwards, then I move upwards and integrate my body into the same plane. Body motion is important. The pivot point can change. Work in a series. The body plays its own part, and the hands help to lock the wrist. In a real situation, movement of only the body is not sufficient, so you must use your hands. Variations on taking and redirecting a knife. When there is a threat of a knife, you should work against the opponent's wrist. Watch. His wrist bends due to rotation. I use my body and take the knife. There is no pressure to the blade. It is all to the wrist. If the knife is pointed at the center of your body, you need to choose in which direction it is easier to rotate, based on the situation. If the knife is pointed at the center of your body and the blade is parallel to the floor, you also need to choose if it is easier to go upwards or downwards. Watch carefully. You can create emptiness and extra space for rotation with a deep exhalation. In case of the threat of a knife against a wall, use the same method. Rotate and integrate your body with the knife. It is important to create contact with the opponent and feel slight movements of the attack's direction. Continue that motion and integrate your body. First, exhale and integrate yourself in the plane. Each time, minimize movement. Watch carefully. Rotate and integrate your body with the knife. Exhale and integrate yourself in the plane. Each time, minimize movement. Chapter 5. Knife Threats to Arteries.
Выстраиваем плоскость, прокручиваем. Здесь дальше работаем.
This is the threat when a knife is placed on your arteries and veins. It is important to understand that the knife cuts horizontally, while vertically it cannot cut, but only scratch. Therefore, rotate immediately with a change of the knife's plane. Place the blade parallel to your wrist. Orient your wrist in the same plane. Create a pivot point with your second hand and rotate. The knife cuts horizontally. Orient your wrist in the same plane. Create a pivot point and rotate. There are many possibilities for what can happen after rotation. The important thing to remember is to create a plane with the knife's blade and remove the thread of cutting. The threat of a knife to the throat. Please, place a knife on me and push. First, it is important to understand where the blade is aimed and in which direction it will move. Relax and exhale. This gives me the opportunity to see where the knife is aimed and how I can escape it. At the same time as you exhale, turn and create a plane. In addition, lock and rotate the opponent's wrist. Remove your neck and extend your chest. Watch. The knife begins to move on exhalation. When the knife is placed against me, space is occupied. During exhalation and turning, it becomes empty. Emptiness allows further action. If I need to capture an opponent or bring him to a precinct, I redirect the knife. Take it away from the attacker and immobilize him with the knife so that he doesn't run away. After exhalation, I lock his wrist and rotate with the other hand. Watch one more time. My legs move together with my body. Again, there are many variants. The most important thing is to remove the neck and redirect the knife. If a knife is placed to your neck, do the same thing as you do in escaping chokes. It is important not to extend your arms upwards in a large radius, but along a minimal trajectory, unnoticeably from below. Don't use force to grab with your arms, but grasp somewhat freely, like how a wrench fits a bolt. It is important to create uncomfortable curvature in your opponent's wrist. Do this by expanding your ribcage and rolling the opponent's wrist along it. This creates pain. If the opponent's arm is slightly bent at the elbow, it is even easier. Place your hands, lock and roll the wrist along your ribcage. Transfer your entire body weight towards the opponent's heel. Watch. I lock his hand, begin to move with my pelvis, and pull him to the side with a squat. Then, I move in the opposite direction and transfer my body weight towards his heel. Another variant is through a lever. The pivot point is the elbow area. This technique is applied to the opponent's elbow towards his heel. Variations on taking and redirecting a knife. Chapter 6. The Threat of a Knife from Behind. Feel the knife. Watch the motions. I am going to turn. I move a little. Feel the knife's direction. Turn and enter its plane. Then I take the knife. When I feel the knife, I turn around and immobilize the knife. I hold the pivot point with one hand and deliver a strike with the other. This deals with the case when you want to knock the knife out of the attacker's hand. After turning around, again, there are many possibilities for strikes in various directions, depending on the situation. In the beginning, it is important to feel the knife and slightly pull it towards yourself while turning. It is very important to feel the knife's direction. Even if you are going to knock it out of the opponent's hand, you need to know where to direct it. Feel the knife. Watch the motions. Begin training slowly. Try to play with your body and feel the direction of an attack. If you take a slightly larger step while turning, you can deliver a kick. Rotate in a circle. Redirect the knife towards the opponent. In the case that the threat comes from behind and your neck is the target, this attack is dangerous, especially when quick. Therefore, as soon as you see in your peripheral vision, begin to withdraw your neck and use a kick. Don't focus on the knife. Withdraw your neck and apply the technique against your opponent's wrist. In the case of a threat from behind to the side of your stomach, do the same. Integrate yourself in the blade's plane. Lock the wrist and rotate. Chapter 7. Knocking a knife out of the opponent's hand. Let's consider a situation in which there is a threat of a knife. First, withdraw from the line of attack. The line of attack is the direction of the opponent's hand and the knife. You need to take a step to the side and remove your body. Look. Withdraw from the line of attack. You need to take a step to the side and remove your body. The task is to relax and move to the side on exhalation. Look, I am completely relaxed. Relax through breathing. We practice this in the instructional DVDs on breathing and self-regulation. Look. Release your body weight at the point of contact. Strike the pulse area to knock the knife out. Your arm should be relaxed. Rotate during the strike. Knock the knife behind yourself. Look, Knock the knife behind yourself.
И наносим удар. С нанесением удара в область паха, в подседе, в развороте и в добивании.
Remember striking technique and the principle of wave motion. I won't concentrate on this now, as it is shown in detail in previous DVDs. Now, it is important to show how to withdraw your body from the line of attack and knock out the knife. After knocking out the knife, you can use striking technique. It is important not to stop, because the opponent can react and begin attacking again. You can grab the knife, rotate from your pelvis, and strike the pulse area. You can knock the knife out by striking slightly upwards the other side of the palm. You can also deliver a strike with both hands, like scissors. After delivering a strike, don't remove your hands. Don't remove your hands. Continue rotating the wrist and then upper spine. You can deliver a strike from a 45-degree downward angle. Multiple strikes are also effective. This is when one strike comes after another. In a dynamic situation, it is important to capture the moment when movement begins. You can deliver a strike with your elbow. You can use a lever. Immobilize the knife with a hand and deliver a strike with your knee. Another possibility is to knock the weapon out with the heel of a boot. Another possibility is to knock the weapon out with the toe of a boot. When the knife is pointed at your back from behind, completely relax. Feel the knife, take a step, turn around, and knock the knife out with your elbow. Watch. I will not knock the knife out. I will just show you the direction. I move with a transfer of body weight and rotation. Remember, if you control the opponent's wrist, you control the knife. Chapter 8. Psychoenergetic Impact to the opponent's central nervous system. Everything begins with sensitivity. It is important to sense the knife, its direction, and also the opponent, his breathing, and his movement. Training starts with physical contact. Then, you gradually minimize motion and begin to work on sensations.
Смотрите, вот он поставил минус, да? Хорошо. То есть смотрите, РС.
It is important to know not only how the human body is built, but also feel your opponent's body, his minimal movement. It is important to turn into your opponent and sense where his body weight and inertia are directed. Chapter 9. The Threat of a Knife in Everyday Life. For example, a person walks into an office, threatens you with a knife, and demands something from you. First, his fingers are pointed towards me. I lock his wrist. Then, the knife comes. It is important to see the direction of the knife, remove your body, and redirect the motion away from yourself. The arm without the knife came first. This was the closest point to me, so I worked with it first. Threat to the throat. In this case, it is important to understand that if he wanted to cut your neck, he would have already done it. So, in this situation, it's only a threat. Therefore, exhale and relax. Simultaneously, withdraw your neck. Then, you can do a somersault backwards and fall backwards from a chair. Let's look at the threat with only one hand, so everything is visible. My goal is to shift my neck, exhale, and redirect the knife towards the opponent. Feel where the motion will go based on the tension in the opponent's arm. The goal is to help him in this motion, but simultaneously withdraw from the line of attack while exhaling and then turn around. If you see the knife in the corner of your eye, immediately place your arm in the knife's plane. Use your second hand and help create a pivot point. Rotate his wrist along your chest and turn.
И вот смотри, вот здесь ты берешь вот эту руку и прямо вот эту руку ведешь сюда и вот тут бросаешь и даешь. Вот. Есть, все.
Seminar participant, Special Forces officer. What I like about Systema Spetsnaz style of martial arts is the use of laws of physics and mechanics. The head starts to think rather than just using some memorized actions. Not only the muscles, but also other organs, including the brain, have to work. The most important thing is to think while executing some task.